Chapter 4, Moscow. It was after 2 a.m. when Dima got back to his hotel room. Getting out of the aquarium had been more difficult than getting in, one tradition that had been kept on. When he left Palyav, he'd found a trio of internal affairs heavies in the outer office. Hoping they were merely for a decoration, he started to move past them, but they blocked his way. He decided to deploy the sweet talk before punching anyone. A bit of foreplay, he thought to himself as he sized up the leader of the three, a face he recognized from way back. "And what can I do for you, gentlemen?" Two of them looked out of practice, their muscles gone soft from years of hitting those too weak to fight back. The one he had to worry about was Fermanov, a Mongolian who had served with him in Afghanistan. The once proud soldier was now in the slow lane, eking out his time up the retirement, doing the shit jobs reserved for older operatives who hadn't been smart enough or unpleasant enough to progress up the greasy pole. Just the sight of him made Dima thankful that he'd gotten out when he had. "Fermanov, old friend, how's life treating you?" The pair of bookends looked bemused, thrown by this unexpected greeting from someone they'd been sent to detain. Eventually Fermanov spoke. "This is awkward." "What did they tell you? That I broken ranks, failed to follow orders, spun out of control?" "Something like that. A simple misunderstanding. Bit of a cross wire, that's all. Right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing. You know what that's like." "Yeah." Despite his instructions, Fermanov gave a shrug. With 15 years to go till he collects his pension, why not use up another 5 minutes? The bookends looked less convinced. "Your comrade here is a bloody good bloke," said Dima. "Saved my life on more than one occasion." Fermanov smiled. They both knew it was crap, but it sounded good. "It was the other way around, you bastard, as well as you know." "Was it? I can never remember. Well, it was a laugh, anyhow." "Do you two know each other?" said Bookend 1. Fermanov rolled his eyes. "The trouble with our superiors," Dima continued, watching Bookend 2 and shifting his weight onto his other foot in readiness, "is they have such short memories, and they forget who's done them a favor." "True," said Fermanov, just as Bookend 2 chose that moment to make his move. As he swung a clumsily right at Dima's jaw, Dima bent and flipped him over his back like a sack of potatoes and shoved him hard against the wall. He collapsed onto the thin carpet, panting. Not wanting to be outdone on the initiative front, Bookend 1 tried to knock Dima off balance by hooking one foot around his left leg while simultaneously slicing him hard across the solar plexus. Dima swung round to see Fermarov's huge hand squeezing the man's neck. He carried on squeezing while Dima stepped neatly out of the way. "I'll say you fought us off and gave us a slip," said Fermarov. "Yeah, 3 against 1. I like that," said Dima. "Nice to run into you. Give my best to your beautiful daughter. She's married now." "Shame." When he reached the hotel, the pretty brunette at reception had finished her shift to be replaced by a severe-looking type, possibly with a potential if you'd like to feel his stilettos on your back, which he didn't. He walked to the Polshinevsky metro and took the purple line back into the center. It had been a funny old day, handling $5 million 1 minute, taking the metro to breakfast the next, not to mention all the killing in between. He let himself into the room. The curtains were open, the neon sign of the club opposite, the comfort zone, stripping the walls with red and green in hectic succession. He let the light off, threw his coat on the bed. Sometimes he wondered what it would be like to be one of those people in the metro, getting up, going to work, arguing with the wife, leading a normal life. Nothing about his life had been normal, and it was too late to change that now. He was who he was, for better or worse. The question was whether he could live with himself. Chapter 5. Dima spent the rest of the day with Kroll. Breakfast had merged into lunch, which meant Kroll was too out of it to drive, so Dima took him home. While his old friend napped, Dima flipped between news channels. Vatseniev had been right. The PLR were clawing their way up the news agenda. Al Jazeera had footage of a big demo in Tehran, the PLR leader saluting the crowd as if he'd already taken over. He turned and addressed the mirror. "For fuck's sake, put that toy away. I'm too tired to do a runner." Palyav got up stiffly, emerging out of his shadow by the window. The XP9 semi-automatic looked absurd in his gnarled hand. He pocketed the pistol, went over to the TV, and turned up the volume. More Iran and CNN footage of Al-Bazir in his Air Force days before he went rogue, saluting a fly past. Dima rolled his eyes. Is that really necessary? You never know who's listening. Thought that was your job. Palyav's lipless slit of a mouth widened into what could have been described as a push, as a grim smile. These days, it's complicated, he shrugged, then gazed around the room from under his heavy-lidded eyes. Rather modest surroundings for someone of your reputation. I like to keep things simple. This is a bit extreme. I like extreme. You know that. That's why you fired me, remember? Oh, Dima, that was a long time ago. Water under the bridge, eh? I think the bridge got swept away in the flood. Dima flopped onto the bed and kicked off his boots. So what is it that your shiny new politician wants you to get me to do? You know I wouldn't be here if it wasn't serious. Dima lay down anyway and stared at the ceiling. Tell you what, you begin my bedtime story, and I'll see how quickly it puts me to sleep. Yeah, we have a situation. You do. I don't. Paliev wafted a hand at the TV, still playing pictures from Iran. I notice. Dima sighed and slid his hand under his head. You only have to blame yourself. You've been supplying Iran ever since they fell out with America. T-72 tanks, MiG-29s, SA-15s, Gauntlet surface-to-air missile systems, Tor M1 air defense missile systems, S-300 anti-aircraft missiles, VA-111 Shvikva torpedoes, arms transfer agreements to the value of $300 million between 1998 and 2001, $1.7 billion between 2002 and 2005. You couldn't help yourselves. Arms exports have kept this country solvent. We're outselling the Americans 2-1. We are the majority supplier to the developing world. It's a great source of national pride. Now you sound just like Tomayev. If you go on like that, I may have to shoot you. Okay. Paliev rubbed a gnarled hand over his face. It doesn't get easier, you know. The Cold War was a lot simpler. You're tired, Paliev. Take a tip from me. Get yourself sacked. That may be sooner than you think, if I get this one wrong. What do you know about Amir Kafarov? Ethnic Chagik, mediocre Air Force lieutenant who helped himself to a fleet of Antonovs during the glorious liberation. When everyone was looking the other way, filled them with stolen kit and flew them off to destinations unknown. Now Russia's foremost and dodgiest arms dealer. You want him killed, I take it? Rescued, actually. Dima laughed. I've been on the wrong end of Kafirov's merchandise in 3 different theaters. Half the boys, soldiers in Libya or in Congo, are toting his AKs. He's putting weaponry into the tribal areas faster than the coalition can take it out with their drones. The guy's an A-list merchant of death. Dima glared at Paliev, a man of the past trying to keep up out of his depths. He raised his hands and let them drop to his knees. He's in Iran. We have to get him back. Now. He's in Kasuts with Al-Bazir. Was? They fell out over a deal. Al-Bazir is holding him, demanding a ransom. Leave him. Let Bazir do his worst. He'll be doing the world a service. Kremlin doesn't see it that way. The Americans find out, that would be bad for us, which together with the national loss of face. Paliev didn't sound convinced by his own words. For all his rank and status, he seemed pathetic. Go away, will you? I'm tired. It's been a long day. Paliev looked up. Don't get me wrong. I admire your principles. God knows I envy your freedom to pick and choose the jobs that come your way. You know me as well as I do, probably better, easy well enough to know I'd never consider something like this. You've got hundreds on your books who jump at the chance to die pointlessly for the motherland. Paliev slowly got to his feet. I don't have a choice here. As you say, I know everything about you. Dima felt the indignation boiling up in him. If you're about to bring up Solomon, don't. He hung his defection around my neck nearly 20 years ago. I've done my time for that one, believe me. Paliev shook his head. Not Solomon, though he might turn out to be in the mix. What does that mean? In Iran, there's been a sighting. Just go. Get out of my life and don't come back. Dima lunged forward and grabbed the old man's lapels. Hear me out, Dima. I've got something for you that can mean a lot more than Solomon. He took a slim manila envelope from his inside jacket pocket. Something that may help you decide to reconsider. Those old Soviet euphemisms, so hard to give up. He let the envelope drop on the bed. Dima kept his eyes on the ceiling. Compromising photographs? You really do live in the past. I've not done anything exciting enough for too long. And anyway, I'm not interested enough for anyone to care. Open. Dima sighed, lifted himself onto an elbow, flicked on the bedside light, tore open the envelope, and shook the contents out onto the bed. A pair of photographs fell out. The first was a long-range close-up of a young man, mid-20s, tall, strong frame, black hair, good suit, among a crowd of commuters on a bridge. Dima didn't register who he was at first. He examined the background that recognized the Point Neuf, Paris. Dima felt his pulse shift a gear. He looked at the other photo, the same man, in a park, sharing a joke with a pretty blonde, pushing a buggy with 2 children. Dima sat up. He held his photos under the light. He stared at the young man for some time, but it was the child's face, the image of his mother, that left him in no doubt. Now his heartbeat was smashing against his ribs. He looked up at Paliev and managed to contort his mouth into something resembling a smirk. Do what we ask, and his name and address is yours. Suddenly, Dima wasn't tired anymore.